and... Okay. Hello and welcome to the Retail Week, our look at the biggest story in the sector over the last 7 days, now live and raring for your feedback. So as we have our discussion today, which is about Debenhams, spoiler alert, do weigh in with the hashtag the Retail Week, and I will try and incorporate your questions into the discussion as we go along. No promises, it is my first time of this. Today we are going to be discussing Debenhams' full year results, which have been to use a very official term, a bit of a stinker. Their worst loss, is it their sharpest loss there?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And plans to close 50 stores over the next 3 to 5 years have been unveiled as well. So, not great. And I am joined today by Rebecca Waller-Davis, our fashion reporter, and Luke Tugby, who covers property, amongst other things. Rebecca, you are literally just off the phone with Debenhams, aren't you? Who are you speaking to today?
So I was speaking to their new CFO, Rachel Osborne, who's been in the job about a month now. Fresh off. Sergio, they were splitting. Well, this is interesting because Debenhams usually do big media briefings. Instead, they were kind of tag teaming today. Rachel actually called with their corporate PR from a cab, so they're very busy. Okay. They're running about all over town.
Right.
But I got kind of 15. Yes, I got kind of 15 minutes with her. So she was. You know what? She was. Echoed Sergio a little bit in tone. They are not kind of talking about how serious this is. They're not talking about the whole kind of spectre of job losses or anything. They are emphasising, they're being quite peppy, quite optimistic, emphasising the good parts, I guess.
What are the good parts?
Well, I mean, they're few and far between, aren't they? The good parts are their plan. The fact that their new stores are apparently going well, though they won't put any numbers to them. So how well or not, we don't know. Right. You do have to search for it.
Yeah, okay, all right. So that feels, well, I don't know. Why don't we have a little bit of a chat about the plans for store closures? So they've said they're going to close around 50 in the next 3 to 5 years, which if memory serves is quite a dramatic shift from, I think they were saying they were going to do about 10 until quite recently, weren't they? So that's obviously a five-fold increase.
Yes.
Luke, you sort of cover the properties, well, you do literally cover the property sector. What do you think of the plan? Do you think it's sort of a strategy that one is necessary and two might work? Or is it, as one analyst whose name I've shamefully forgotten said, smacks of desperation and begs the question as to why it's taken them so long to address basic issues?
I wouldn't say it's desperation. I do agree with the second point. They've sort of got by and somehow survived with years with 160 odd stores, and let's face it, it never needed that many. Not to blame private equity ownership for all of its problems, but if you go back to pre-float, you know, in the early 2000s, it just smacked of the ownership looking to expand and tell this growth story prior to the IPO. And it's basically been saddled with those property problems for some time. It's only really over the past 3 to 5 years that those problems are really coming home to roost and coming through properly, because we've seen the huge growth in business rates, we've seen changing consumer habits and people moving online, and department stores are just struggling to keep up with that change in habits. So desperation, not quite. Late to the party in terms of doing this, yes. Are 50 closures enough? I still don't think so. That still leaves Debenhams with 100 stores, and if you look at that portfolio compared to John Lewis and compared to House of Fraser, it's still oversized. It could still get rid of a few more, I think.
Well, yeah, this is interesting. So I asked Rachel about this on the call, because obviously the narrative around the stores has really, really changed, and that's worrying. You know, not so long ago we were being told 10 is the absolute most, and we were told they weren't loss-making, but if they were in the future then they would be closed. Well, apparently it's only taken 12 months for those stores to become loss-making. Those 50 are now the kind of 5-year projection. I don't know why they weren't doing the 5-year projection previously. I asked that question and didn't get much of an answer. And I also asked, well, you know, you said 50, you said 10, now you're saying 50. Obviously things change. How can your shareholders trust that it's not going to be, you know, 70, 80 in a few years' time? And again, there was a bit of
such a contradiction in such a short amount of time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, the narrative has really changed, but arguably it hasn't changed enough. I think there's been a real problem with how this is being communicated. You know, Sergio was on the BBC earlier, And he was not talking about job cuts. He was talking about the changing face of retail. Well, actually, if you're on BBC News and the headlines, 50 store closures, you need to be addressing that, no matter if it is over time.
Although actually, it's a very good point, particularly when it comes to jobs and the sheer thousands of people that are going to be impacted. But investors actually seem to have reacted fairly well to it this morning. The share price was up about 17 or 18% last time I checked. So I think there is a realisation and this admission, certainly in the market, that what Debenhams is doing has to be done. It's not going to be easy, and whether it is enough to preserve it for the longer term, who knows? It's got a real fight on its hands still. This is definitely the beginning of what's going to be quite a long journey.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about the capex? So they've said that they're going to go to, it's the Debenhams redesign strategy, and which sounds like it's sort of far-reaching.
Yes.
But that sort of goes alongside plans to cut down their capex to, is it 70 million?
It's 70 million.
Am I being a cynical journo?
I think you're just being a realistic journo. I think that she was very.
That work? So
yeah,
to just
exactly.
Make it explicit. How do you add up those two? That just doesn't seem like enough money to get anything of real substance done
exactly.
at that scale.
I think it's going to be a very big challenge. There is one point, which is the capital contributions from landlords. So when a store is doing badly, as most, I imagine, of Debenhams store estate is, that's obviously not good for landlords in the long term, and so Debenhams is going and asking landlords for capital contributions, and it is getting those significant portion. That could be, 20%, it could be 50%, I don't know. You would know more about capital contributions from landlords than I would, I think. So that is one point in their favour. But in terms of, how far 70 million stretches, not very. Rachel did say on the call that she said something about, we don't sell stores, we sell great product. It's much more about product than it is about store design. But again, that's having to row back on a strategy because they don't have the money. And that, in this market, is really not a good place to find yourself in.
And also, is it even selling great product at the moment?
No,
I would argue not.
No.
And just to come back to the point on CapEx, and you compare that to Selfridges, who have spent 300 million quid on one store over the last 4 years.
Or John Lewis, which is spending, I think, is it 250 million a year capex for the kind of foreseeable future? That is the money that you need to be spending to get yourself ahead in this market. Otherwise, it's
wading through treacle.
Yeah.
Well, with that in mind, and bearing the fact that we're probably running out of time, one last one. Where can it go from here? Can it be saved, or are we watching another VHS unfurl?
Well, I asked that question again, and a few minutes ago it was definitely dodged. It was very... Cool. She said they were very confident on the self-help front. We're very confident that we are helping ourselves and we will get no help from the market, when asked whether she was confident that they would still be around in 12 months' time.
Wow.
So, it's really got to a very tricky time for them, definitely.
I think Christmas is huge, isn't it? That
Christmas
is absolutely massive. And judging by the state it's in at the moment, I can't see it being a particularly good one.
You know about with the credit insurance being pulled back, there's just real concerns about whether the products will even be there to sell.
Well, exactly. Yeah. You see the state. I was in the Southampton store at the weekend, and areas that used to be quite bustling with Topshop and Dorothy Perkins, Miss Selfridge. There's nothing on the walls there. Signage is gone. There's just sale racks everywhere. And this is 9 weeks out before Christmas, and you think
when people are starting to think about going into shops to do their Christmas shopping.
Exactly, and you're not going to turn. Presumably, that is something that's being replicated in a few other stores across the country. Yeah. And I don't see how you turn that round in the next 2 or 3 weeks to be ready for that Christmas rush. But it's going to be a really tough Christmas. I do fear for it big time. Yeah. I won't say it's definitely going to be the next BHS, because I think people like Mike Ashley are there waiting potentially to bail it out.
BHS definitely had its own problems, and it has so much more, I guess, leadership and management support than BHS
and
did.
also there is somebody with actual deep pockets and experience potentially waiting in the wings, which
yes.
what did BHS have at the 11th hour? Dominic Chappelle. So there you go. It's going to be a different 12 months, but certainly an interesting one. Thank you so much for your thoughts, guys. All super interesting. Thank you very much for tuning in. Next week we have next Q3 results and no doubt other stuff as well. Thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.